Hello and welcome to this week's episode of The Insider, brought to you just for a change by Vanishing Inc. Now, actually, welcome to the new season, because it's the first episode of the brand new season, and golly gosh, we've got some names for you coming up. I've had to pinch myself sometimes with the people that have agreed to come on the show, including the two gentlemen that are on today. Now, they might not be names that are instantly familiar to you, but you will be very, very aware of their work. It's Lincoln Hiatt and Andrew Golder, the producers of Penn Teller. Fool Us. Gentlemen, how are you both today?
We are good. We're happy to be here with the Vanishing Inc. crowd, appearing for you non-magically via all manner of electronics, and excited to talk to your audience, and tell spread the word and tell stories.
Tell us about your background. What do you do outside of Fool Us? And are you magicians?
No, neither of us are magicians. Our entry into we're television producers by trade, and I met Penn when I hired him to host a show that I did on NBC called Identity, and had nothing to do with magic. It was a game show, Shiny Floor game show here, and that began our friendship. And then several years later, we collectively sort of came up with the idea for Fool Us, and couldn't sell it in the United States, but did manage to find an audience in your fair United Kingdom. And
Indeed.
And then, through very strange and winding road, it ended up in America 3 years later, where they aired the first season of the show that we shot in the UK, and then it took off from there. Many happy.
That did gangbusters in the ratings, didn't it? The British version for that time slot on the CW.
Yes,
it
right? Did. The CW has a different sort of ratings metric than some of the other networks, but yeah, for them it's been consistently very successful from the beginning.
Amazing. So when you're sitting there and you're chatting with Penn, how did the idea come about?
So the idea for the show kind of came about when Penn was going through an airport with Pete Golden, who's our other executive producing partner, who's not on the Zoom, and a kid came up to Penn and said, do something that'll fool me, and that started a conversation between them about how people just want to be fooled, and that whole notion. And from there, it sort of evolved into an idea for a show. And again, it was a show that at the time, magic on American television was really close to non-existent. I mean, it had been some years since David Blaine doing anything, and I think it was sort of one of the things that's been interesting through the course of the show is that there was that period where there wasn't a lot of magic on TV at all, pretty much anywhere, but there was certainly we happened to find executives at ITV in the UK who liked magic, and they put the show on. I think there's a slightly warmer spot at the time for it on British TV, but what's been interesting is that through the years of us doing it, and then the various Got Talent franchise, that magic. The presence of magic on television, we've watched it grow in the time that since the time we started Fool Us, between us and Got Talent, and some of the things on Netflix and all that. It's really been it's kind of I wouldn't say exploded necessarily, but kind of, I think.
Yeah, no.
Right. But I one of the things that I believe you can credit the show for is that television magic used to be, or was largely, stage illusions, saw and halves, box tricks, and all that kind of thing. And we have fortunately found a way to make the small stuff work too. And people will watch a card trick on television, which I don't think was a given 10 years ago.
So why do you think that is? Is it the way you shoot the card trick? Is it the format of Fool Us? Why do you think it's now working so well?
We've probably both got theories about it. I think one is there is embedded in the format of the show. There's the expectation that something interesting is going to come out of Penn's mouth.
Right.
And nobody talks like Penn. So even if you're watching something you don't quite get, every trick is trying to create some wonder. Every trick is trying to create surprise. There's a certain amount of comprehension required to understand and enjoy a trick. But even if you miss something, something cool's coming up for Penn. He's going to shed a little bit of light on it, or he's going to make a funny comment on it. There's more reward coming. And so, it's almost like you're waiting for that button. You're interested in the act because you're equally as interested in the evaluation that comes after.
That's interesting. But the code that is used to discuss stuff is quite interesting. That part of the day job that I do for Vanishing Ink is obviously all the marketing, and turtle is a search term that we've started ranking on. And that word that was never used to describe an expanded shell. I don't believe. I'd never heard it before it was mentioned on the show. And now we're getting people searching for that on Google, but also in the internal search on Vanishing Ink. They'll go up and type in, because we obviously see what they're typing in, and they'll go in and type in. So it's very powerful.
I mean, you could have a sub-search category of just things Penn says that don't make sense to people other than magicians.
That would make a fantastic glossary. That's a good idea for a blog post, actually. I may have to go back through them.
I don't know. Then you'd be giving it all away. All the secrets that we're trying to keep, you would be exposing.
Yeah, to magicians.
Yeah, but
No, I won't do it. And it's too much work anyway. What's the process for choosing the acts that come on the show?
Lots and lots and lots of watching magic. It is indeed that sort of simple, and it's sort of the nuts and bolts work of sitting. I mean, you can't. There's no shortcut you can take, I guess, is really what I want to say. We have to look at the acts, and we're certainly through time now. It's sort of a different bar because we've done over 100 episodes, well over 100 episodes now, and so at the beginning it was very easy. It was easier in one sense because every trick was new, and now what comes at a premium, or more of a premium, obviously, look, it's got to be a good performance, and it's got to be a good trick, but often it's also, people can do a trick, but give it a good plot or a different sort of presentation as well. Mm-hmm. And that works beautifully for the show too.
And that's also part of the answer. It's not just, the secret isn't we spend a lot of time watching tricks. We probably spend some great multiple of that really considering them and looking at every one through a positive lens and asking ourselves, okay, this goes X far. This goes halfway there. Is there anything that we can bring to it? Is there any adjustment that's going to put this over the line? Because we want every trick to succeed, and we want the fresh faces, and we want the novel approaches. And so it's sort of an improv. It's like a magic producer improv, as we look at everything with the positivity that it can become a television trick on Fool Us.
How much of a consideration when you're doing that screening and watching is the thought of whether it is likely to actually fool them? Or are you just looking for an entertaining, fresh, beautiful trick?
I think we're just looking for an entertaining visual trick. I mean, the fooling thing is indeed the cherry on top for the performer. And it's a great moment when it happens. But many people have been on the show and gotten a tremendous career boost from just being on the show, because
not fooling them. Yeah.
It's not everything that the guys say is always positive, and they're always talking about the things they like about a trick. And there's this sense of, as I say to the cast always, it's a show by magicians for magicians, even though, as we've revealed, we are not magicians, but it came from, it's Penn and Teller out in front of this thing. And it was never meant to be mean in any way. So the fooling aspect of the show isn't important to us at all. Now we will, there's certainly, but when we're watching and we see something that, oh, that's unique, that definitely is a plus for sure.
Right.
But it's not. It is simply, is that an entertaining act of TV? That's the only thing that's our concern.
We have certain ways of looking at things, but it changes moment to moment. We look at tricks. Is that an old trick done in a new way? That may be a way to get on the show. Is that a new trick done in an old way? Is there a that may be too?
I don't even know what that means. What's a new trick done in an old way?
Well, repurposing a method in a method in wolf's clothing or a method in sheep's clothing. Are people, because there's not an endless amount of variation of everything.
There's a very finite number of methods.
It's like plots of movies. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. And they're just, you can boil every movie plot down into about 7 different things. I think there's more variety in magic. But it is incredibly difficult. And this is what from being a magic novice to a 10 seasons in magic producer, is realizing that the act of creation isn't, oh, gee, you'll just sit down with a napkin and a pen and I'll have something good by the evening before supper. It's much more difficult than that. And our respect, and my personal respect for magicians and the act of creating and perfecting performance is immense.
And has that changed since you started working on the show?
Well, no, I never disrespected them. Have you found a new?
I wasn't suggesting you were disrespecting them. Have you got a newfound appreciation?
I didn't start in the gutter and move my way up to the curb or the doorstep.
Going around just punching children's magicians.
It took yeah.
So true.
when I wasn't punching clowns.
They're asking for it, though. They're asking for it, to be fair.
No, it's just, Andrew's a creative person. I think of myself as a creative person. And as a creative person, you always imagine. You can't be one unless you imagine that the solutions are out there.
Yeah.
But I didn't know how hard you had to work to find the solutions for a novel presentation and a new magic trick. And every time we get one, it's a sheer joy.
I can imagine. But now you've been working behind the scenes on it for so long. What is your view on method in terms of how much it interests you? Have you got more interested in how a card sleight works or how something else works, or do you just not really care about the method?
No, we care about the method way more. I mean, look, we knew nothing going into it, really. When we started the show, we knew nothing of method. And now we watch tricks and, sort of as we're watching them, part of the process is trying to now figure it out, just like Penn and Teller. So when we're watching a trick, we now know, as Jamie Ian Swiss once said to me, he said, you know enough to be dangerous. I don't know much, but I know enough to be dangerous. That it becomes, we're playing the game that Penn and Teller are playing when we're watching tricks get submitted. And then when we find out the methods, because we need to know as part of our process,
sure, yeah.
and the judging process to figure out whether they fooled Penn and Teller or not, along with Mike Close, it's fascinating to realize the lengths to which people go to create things and create fooling methods. And of course, as you well know, within the magic community, sometimes the inverse can be quite fascinating too, that it is such a simple method that, that blows your mind in a completely different way.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. So some of my favorite tricks, I would almost classify the method as stupid. It's like, oh my God, that's all you're doing?
And that's why we keep secrets.
You snookered me with that? And I
But then
honestly,
you feel dumb right?
No, I'm thrilled. I
Oh,
laugh
okay.
out loud
Okay,
sometimes.
okay,
I
okay.
love those ones because method is kind of a fancy word. You know, it
Hmm.
implies this mechanism and cogs fitting together
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
wires pulling in perfect sequence, and it turns out just to be
A
I
plastic
don't want to
thumb or
a
whatever. Yeah.
plastic
Yeah.
thumb or whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And those are so when there's a new stupid method, it becomes my new favorite trick.
I'm going to release something called my new stupid method just because
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it will sell.
We can't wait to see it.
How many? What percentage of the videos that get submitted get to you? I imagine there's screening people below, and I mean
Oh
this in the
yeah,
nicest way,
layers
below
and
you.
layers and oh yeah,
So
just squadrons.
if 100 get sent in, how many get to in front of your eyes?
100.
At this point, all of them.
Really?
Yeah. We have, here's what has happened with the show is that, um, there, we started out having sort of, we started out, when the show started out, it was, we knew who the people were more or less, because we could pick anyone in the world
Hmm.
when no one had been on the show. But as it evolved, there was a little bit of a bridge between us so that someone knew, oh, if we'd had, this trick on or something like this trick on before, it might not have gotten in front of us. But as time has gone on, and the truth is that we're the only ones who know, we're the only ones now who know everything that's been on all, 100 plus episodes of Fool Us. So no one else has that institutional knowledge,
Right.
and to bring them up to speed would be to have them watch 120 hours of television or whatever it is, to know all the tricks that have been done. So by default, we now must slash do watch
Everything.
everything that comes in.
Yeah, well,
Blimey.
default and necessity, and
Right.
because we've been through this so many times with so many performers, there's a trick that I will look at or Andrew will look at, and I said before we have this lens of positivity. We'd love to watch 60 tricks in a row over the course of 15 days and book the show and sign up every one of them. That's never going to happen, but ideally the next one you watch is the next great trick you're going to put on the air. But because there is this process of developing and nudging and reshaping and making something for a transfer from a stage trick to a TV trick, which is quite a different thing we can talk
For
about.
sure. Yeah.
There's nobody else that can do that visualization for us. Nobody else has the very specific, only useful in one situation, producer knowledge that we have of how to put magic on TV, where we can look at that and go, that's not working as is, but it will work on TV if. And we turn the knob from, 1 to 3, and then we're off and running. Creatively, Andrew and I working together, taking something that at first glance to somebody who has not had the benefit of all these hours that we have, they would look at it and say, no, we can't do that.
So is that something that transference is interesting? And is that something that you can do sort of on your own as television producers that are not magicians, or is that when you bring close in with the magical expertise? How does the transfer happen?
It's certainly a little bit of both, but it is primarily not dealing with magic specifics, which and Mike contributes to what we're talking about as well. But Mike is more specifically tasked with looking at the magic for television and knowing that if you hold your arm like this, the specific moves that he, has years of experience knowing how to make something look just right for TV or smoother or a different or a different. He also knows how Penn and Teller think a little better than most everybody else. So
Yeah.
Mike can be very helpful in going, oh, but if you do this, you'll have a better chance of fooling them. What Lincoln's talking about is more from a television producer point of view, theatrically, as we say to ourselves, not in a negative way, it's just fully understandable, that someone who's spent a career, working out how to do a series of particularly amazing magic sleights is not necessarily someone who is a writer of a premise that's going to translate to television,
Right.
and it is a little different. The attention span and all that of a TV audience is different than someone performing in a club or in a parlor or wherever, where people aren't generally on their phones and have a million other distractions. So there's a precision and a number of other factors that where every second has to count and move things forward, and a number of other things that we kind of take into consideration that a normal magician performing shows doesn't have to think about. Yeah, that's us sort of taking something and going, oh, we could take this and, as Lincoln said, turn the dial, and it suddenly becomes a plot that makes it very unique.
So is that dial turning usually plot and pruning? You're not,
Yeah.
it's not camera movements or lighting or.
Correct.
No, I mean, camera's a consideration, and we get our director involved in the process, a little bit further after we've chosen our acts, and we want to make sure that we know where we can't shoot and what angles we've got to protect and all that kind of thing. I mean, there's sort of a deliberate staging element to all this that comes later. But at first it's generally how do we make the most of this trick? And once we've made the most of this trick and this performer and his abilities, does that belong on this very specific show that we've created?
Right. Was the positive, just to go back to the beginning again, because Penn has been occasionally known to be a bit angry about some things and be a bit rude about some things from time to time. Was it always in your heads to make this a positive show? Because that's the one thing that comes across is just a love of magic and trying to show magic in the best possible light it could be shown in. Was that there from the get-go, or did you play with the idea of Penn being nasty Penn on the show at all? Do you know what I mean? Was it always positive?
I mean, it was always, I mean, the guy's intent was never, at that point, American Idol was more near the beginning, certainly, than it is now, and the whole Nasty Simon thing was more in the public consciousness, and it was very much in the guys' heads from the beginning, and our collective heads, that wasn't the spirit that we were going to do things on Fool Us. That said, if you watch the first season of Fool Us, Penn he's become a little warmer and fuzzier than he was in the first season, although not at all nasty in the first season. But what certainly helped the show at the beginning, I think, and still is there, as you say, in your consciousness, that Penn has that edge to them, is the perception that he will go there.
Right.
And I think that is a delicious little bit of the souffle.
Yeah.
That helps. And he does go. He does bluster at certain performers, although now he does it in a very he does it with people he knows he can yell at.
I hate you stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's no greater badge of honor than to have him tell somebody to, I hate you. I absolutely hate you. Those rants are everybody's favorite thing to watch.
Of course.
How you deliver vitriol with love at the same time, I don't know, but he's mastered that.
Absolutely. Do you typically seek out acts, or do they come to you?
A little bit of both. More at the beginning, there was the deliberate seeking out when we were working with Johnny Thompson along with Mike, who knew a bunch of acts, and no one had been on the show, and the show was just starting. And then as time has gone on, certainly for us now, no outreach is too large. Right. We want everybody who's in any way, shape, or form interested to send us stuff, because that's what we need to keep the show going, really.
I hear that you keep everything to do with what's going to happen on that stage a secret from Penn and Teller before they come on.
Absolutely.
Is that true? And how hard is it to pull off? You can just it's just us talking.
Just between us.
Just between us. Do they really not know?
Just between us, they don't. Just between us, they don't know.
Amazing.
And it's not hard to pull off. I mean, listen, there's, we've got, especially in the beginning, we made very clear that, this walkway is good and this walkway is no good, and we really don't even want them to see it, catch a glimpse of the performer as they're walking on stage and a performer's walking on stage. We try and keep it as absolutely clean as possible, and we do. But understand, it's sort of like, I would equate it to, a kid and a Christmas present, where there's different personalities, different choices, but that for Penn and Teller, they don't really want to know until it's time. That's part of the fun for them. There's they don't want to cheat. They want to, play the game in the spirit that the game is created. And indeed for them, look, in the very first season there, where we did it, part of setting up the show and we aired it, was an interview with the guys and talking about, that they've done magic for so long that there's no greater thrill for them than to be fooled. They really do want to be fooled, even though they don't want to be fooled too much, because, then they do get frustrated, scared, and whatever, but but they love to be fooled.
How wonderful. Talk about what happens during the bust. Do Penn and Teller talk to you? What happens?
Well, in the necessary division of labor, Lincoln is running the interview with the performer and Allison, and he has, helps shape that journey. And at the same time, I'm listening to, along with Mike Close, we're listening to everything Penn and Teller say. And that is how, and they're obviously having a discussion that no one would want to air, where they're talking about method in no uncertain terms. And based on what they say, we can figure out whether they've got it or they don't have it. And that's really how that works. And that goes on, indeed longer than, obviously, it airs as a 1-minute interview. The truth is that, Penn and Teller do spend a little bit more time than that trying to, even just to explain it so that we can understand their full theory of how a trick is done, is often not done that anywhere near that quickly. So they get a little more time, certainly, than you see on television. And we're listening to that conversation, and it's out of that we make the decision of whether they've been fooled or not.
And sometimes that goes wrong, right? Like with my boss, Mr. Andy Gladwin.
Indeed. Sometimes. Look, there have been 2 or 3 times where, indeed, look, when we listen to that, we are looking out for the performers. Although, again, the conversation goes on longer than you see it on television, but it is not limitless and endless and without every stone unturned. And so occasionally there are these gray areas where where Penn will ask a probing question and someone will give an answer where they think Penn and Teller have figured it out, when in fact they haven't. And then we collectively go back and right that wrong. Part of what almost always happens after a trick is done is that, and it certainly always happened in Las Vegas when everyone was in person, is the guys, and pre-COVID, is the guys would go backstage and talk with the acts most times briefly and say, they'd have a magic discussion. They'd talk about how a trick was done or something. And I think certainly with at least one act, pardon?
Yeah, Alexandra de Vivier. There was
right. It was Alexandra and with
Simon
Coronel.
Simon Coronel, right? Yeah. Exactly. That out of that discussion, Teller realized we didn't really quite figure if that's how you did it, then we didn't quite figure that out, So yes, then we go back in time and make sure that justice is served.
Well, that I think that's a really important and lovely thing. I've had several previous Fool-less performers on the show, and every single one of them said how amazing the whole production team and production process is, and how well they're looked after. How conscious a choice was it for the entire production team to be so lovely to performers?
Well,
and what do you think you do differently from other talent shows?
I think it goes back to what we said earlier. We genuinely like magic, and we respect the effort that goes into these performances, and we like the magicians themselves. So we treat them with that respect, both for their craft and for them as individuals. And, they say a fish rots from the head down. Well, I think a production succeeds from the head down. Right. And Andrew and I are very conscious of the way we treat both our staff and our magical guests, and people see that and they follow the lead because they know that it's absolutely crucial too. There's also the manner of getting people ready to be on the stage, and more as the show has gone on, that's a very alien thing to some of these people. Or to be in front of cameras might be an alien thing. To be in front of Penn and Teller, certainly if they haven't been on the show before, comes with its share of a mixture of fear and approbation. So
of course.
We want them to be as comfortable as they possibly can when they get out there, because our goal, absolutely 100%, is that they succeed. We want them all to have a great performance. We want them all to enjoy the experience. We want them all to fool Penn and Teller if they can. So we treat everybody, with that guidance and direction, and the atmosphere through and through. We've got so many people who've been with us since the beginning of the show who are wonderful, and they treat them the same way because they love magic and the performers in the show the way that we do.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fun show I think for us and for the crew to work on. There are people who work on a number of shows, and almost all of our crew has been with us in America since the beginning and stayed with the show. And, many of them say, this, out of all the shows I do, this is my favorite. I mean, there really is. Look, because they're watching something that's fun, really.
How interesting.
They
is
really
that common?
like it, I think.
Is that common to keep the production team and the crew for that many years?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's not. No, it's difficult. Listen, just the timing of everybody's gigs and all that. Yeah. And I think the other thing is, look, performers are going to perform. Two other things to say is performers are going to perform better if they're comfortable. And at the end of the day, it doesn't do us any good to not make that experience as good as it can be for the performers. We as television producers lose if the people that are going out on our show aren't put in a position to succeed as best they can every step of the way. So that's a big part of it. And I think the other thing, as it relates to the particular audience here for you, is that there's only so many people who can do what magicians do. On a singing show, I mean, anybody can, for good or bad, kind of sing. Mm-hmm. And as we talked about, some of those shows enjoyed the fact that some people were bad. Well, that's not part of our world in any way. And we understood early on that it is to some degree not a secret society, but a somewhat closed circle, and it was important to us and to be accepted within that circle because there from the beginning there was and to some degree there still is, although we've definitely seen that change with time, some hesitancy by magicians to come on especially as the show was launching, to come on what seemed like or could be viewed in some way as a talent show. Yeah. And so there were members of the community who didn't want to come on what they thought was that kind of show. And we've worked very hard to sort of dispel that and try and get and that's part of what you're talking about. This sort of people come on the show and they do indeed feel taken care of, and feel like it is a welcoming environment, as opposed to a get on the show, do your silly trick and get off. That's definitely not how we feel. And as we've begun to, when it became sort of clear to us the show isn't going to continue past a couple of seasons, it became even more important for us to become, to the degree that we can as non-magicians, part of the magic community. So we've began going to magic festivals around the world, and doing auditions there, and doing some talk, taking an hour and talking about, like we're doing with you, what we're looking for and how TV is different than stage performing and stuff like that, in an effort to, become to some degree part of that community. And it's been really fun because, as you know, they're lovely people within the magic world.
Absolutely.
I remember very specifically feeling and saying out loud and to myself early on that I was so grateful to be allowed into the magic community. I felt like there was some risk that that there would be a bubble or a wall that we wouldn't be able to get past, and that would also inhibit our ability to make the show. And as we were able to develop trust early on, it felt good. It was kind of nice to join the club,
Yeah.
And the fact that we give people a good experience isn't entirely altruistic, because if you come on the show and you have a hateful experience, you're going to go out and you're going to tell your friends, don't go on that show. You come on the show and you have a good experience and you feel like you were able to do your best as a performer, then you tell your friends the other. You say, hey, you should give this a shot.
Yeah, and as the community, as you observed earlier, is so small, that word spreads real fast.
It does, and people have come to us, and without naming other productions, but people have come to us and said, XYZ other show, boy, they were rough, or they didn't understand magic, or they made me do something I didn't want to do. We don't want to be that show.
You're not. How does it feel to have created a show that is, without doubt, the best positive vehicle for sharing magic to the masses? You've put more magicians in front of more people's face than I think probably anybody. How does that feel to be the custodians of this vehicle?
It's great. It's absolutely 100% positive. Yeah, listen, we are, we do take it seriously. We're not just, whatever. We understand that, and take great pride in the fact that we are a show now that people like and respect, and we enjoy working with the community. And we're super happy that we've also, been on long enough to watch people come on the show who can say, younger magicians who say, I got interested in magic by watching Fool Us, and now I'm on Fool Us. That is particularly heartening to us. That's a great story, and it's kind of unbelievable. You do television shows, you don't necessarily think that you're
shaping people,
for lack of a better word, changing people's lives.
Yeah, man.
But it's that is really unbelievable, that it's made that kind of an impact on people is truly, I think, touching to us, to Penn and Teller, to Mike, to Johnny, and that's kind of amazing. And to watch, I think, as Penn talks about, I think the show has also really increased the perception of female magicians, over the years. I think there are unquestionably a lot more female magicians. I mean, when did anyone ever see female magicians not as the assistant before 10 years ago? And not just us, but again, the Got Talents and whatever other shows. But you didn't see many females doing
very few
their act, and we've watched that grow. And Penn talks about how, they pre-COVID, they would always end their show by going out in the lobby and talking with anyone who wanted to talk with them for quite
the
some
last
time.
person, yeah.
Exactly right. And he said, before there would be, one or two teenage boys who would come, or and now, it's oftentimes in a week more girls, more female magicians, aspiring female magicians, or that want to talk with them than guys. And I think the other thing that we've seen change that's super cool is that it's become a family thing. The audience of Fool Us is not merely kids, it's also kids and parents, and it's a family thing, and it's something that gets enjoyed that way, which is also super cool.
Absolutely.
I think it's especially empowering for younger people aspiring to get into magic if they see themselves on stage, and that means putting somebody like them on stage. So we've made a very conscious effort to reach out and not just have the same batch of guys who play the same batch of clubs. We look out in the world and look for greatness wherever we can, and we've succeeded at that, and that's very rewarding to know that we've had some impact there.
No, as the father of a 7-year-old girl who's getting very interested in magic, I thank you for putting those people on the screen for her to be able to see. Oh, maybe I can do that. I might not be a white middle-aged man, but look.
Well, exactly.
That's right. But if you look at the female performers we've had on the stage and look at the tricks that they've done, some of them have been astonishing. Whether the method is enormously complex or as I said before, my favorite stupid methods, but they're coming out and they're doing things that nobody else is doing, or they're doing them in ways that nobody else is doing. It's because they're bringing a different experience. They're looking at magic through a different lens.
Of course.
And that's a great benefit. That's a great benefit to us and to the show.
So, for the people that are listening, which is thousands of magicians.
So this isn't another one of those secret questions?
No. This question's for everybody that's listening. What would be your dream, ideal sort of acts to have on the show at this stage? So, for example, if there was a guy that did some crazy thing with coin, is there? Have you got a thing in your head? It'd be great if we had a coin trick, or if we had a mentalist, or if we had this. Is there things that you think you could use more representation of?
If we said that, that'd be all we get for the next round of submissions.
Fair point. Okay, I'll rephrase the question. What do you look for in an act for Fool Us?
Well, that goes. There isn't an ideal act, and look, we have to book. In a season, we book somewhere between 56 and 60 acts a year. Times whatever that is, 9 seasons. I mean, it's close to it's a lot of magicians.
It's a lot.
We need a lot of acts, and so for us to say that we want anything specific, it would simply be not true.
Okay.
We want and are open
everything.
to. We want any and everything.
Okay.
And as fans of the show know, every episode has a diversity of tricks.
One way, if you're trying to give some practical advice to the people watching or listening to this,
that's what I was very ham-fistedly trying to do. Yes.
No.
Thank you for saving me, Lincoln.
It's funny because people, and we get emails all the time. It's like, what are you looking for? And I go, well, good magic. But practical advice, I guess we could say this. If knowing that 25% of our tricks are cards, so that's 1 out of 4 acts besides the Penn Teller act in the body of the show is going to be cards. That means that 75% of what we do is not cards. There are lots of great card tricks. We're still surprised by great card tricks. We're still booking great card tricks. Please keep sending us your card tricks. But 3/4 of what we put on is not a card trick. So how do you, if there, like we talked about before, that there are a limited number of plots to movies, there are a limited number of devices, it seems, to magic. If you're gonna send us ropes, how do you do ropes like nobody has ever done it before? If you're going to send us rings, how do you do rings like nobody has ever done it before, like it's never been on the show before? I mean, because there are all these standards, the onus is on the magician to reimagine them as completely as possible, to carve out a space for that standard to be on the show again. Because we can't just do those things the same way. And one of the reasons it's easier with cards is you've got 52 things to mess with, you know. Yeah. And then the reason it's hard with rings is you've only got 3 things and they're identical to mess with, you know. So some areas are more prolific than others certainly. We go through spells where we've got a bunch of mentalism. We've kind of gone through stage illusions, and there's a little bit less room for that now. Because I think maybe there's a little bit less variety in that now. We've done a fair bit of escapes, and it's hard to find the next brilliant escape unless you talk to Arthur Coughlin, who's Helen Coughlin's dad, and then there's going to be another brilliant escape out there. But it's that. It's like look at the whole school of stuff that's in magic and say, okay, I'm going to pick up this thing that's familiar, and I'm going to make it completely unfamiliar. And that's going to be a trick that gets on.
That is fantastic advice.
There you go. That's all we got.
How do people apply to get on the show?
They email us with a video of their proposed act at fooluscasting at gmail.com. Fooluscasting@gmail.com. I should say that as a full sentence. But,
you should.
Yes.
Email us. I thought I'd upset you. I will put a link to that email address in the show notes. Now, should this be a professionally filmed thing, or is it fine if somebody does it just using their cell phone camera? What are you looking for?
Cell phone video is fine. It is perfectly fine. We can't say enough. We don't need a fancy theatrical presentation of a trick. We just need it filmed as you would do it on Fool Us. I would say, again, to give advice of things that are helpful or less helpful for us. You know, some acts will send us, here's half an hour of my act, or here's 5 tricks. Figure it out.
Right.
That's harder for us because now, as you know, as we've told you, we watch everything. So it's much easier if we get one person's best trick and they say, send us that. And then if we say, hey, no, send us something else, then they can send us another one. But to send us 5 or to send us a link to a show and say, watch it and see if there's anything you like, that is less good for us than here's one trick. I shot it on my iPhone. And also, if, you know, it's sort of in keeping with, this is not necessary, but, you know, how would a performer do it on our show? Mm-hmm. Our show is different. You can deal with Penn and Teller, you can deal with Allison, you know, and then you're performing as the magician, you're performing with a celebrity, and you've got to just, you know, but how does it fit, you know, on our show? If you can do a performance as if you were on Fool Us, as opposed to just not on Fool Us. Now, that said, if someone's got a performance where they've got a friend taping a performance they're doing for the public, obviously that's fine too. They don't need to make it Fool Us centric because they're doing a show that isn't Fool Us.
Yeah. But just to clarify this for people listening, so there's a 14-year-old young lady that's listening to this. She has no shows, but she's got this killer trick. Would it be cool for her just to film that in her kitchen, doing the trick on her dad and send it in, or carer, whatever, you know, and send it in? Yeah. It doesn't need to be.
Did you see Amanda? Did you see Amanda Nepo this season?
Mm-hmm.
So that was entirely her creation, and it was filmed on her iPhone, probably sitting at her desk where she does her homework at home. You know,
okay.
And that was the extent of it, but. It was clearly, it had loads of personality. It was incredibly inventive. That didn't need to be in a town hall or in Radio City to work, you know. And sometimes, not that you can't send us a clip from your show. It certainly, as Andrew pointed out, if you send us a 45-minute set and you say go to minute 10:22, go to a minute 14:15, and go to 17:20 and go to 24 minutes in. and look at all of those things. Given the amount of acts that we get submitted and the amount of time that we have to look at them in a day, because we're not just watching with them, but we're working with them and doing all the other producing work, that's inefficient for us, so it's not good for the performer to send stuff that way.
Right.
And if you're going to lift something out of your show, that's fine. But, and I'm trying to be as practical as possible.
That's what I want. Yeah.
But if you say you've lifted and posted just for us as a unlisted YouTube link, which is what we generally ask for, if the first minute and a half is getting 5 people out of the audience, it kind of wears us down a little bit. Because we don't spend we don't spend 90 seconds of TV time getting people out of the audience.
Yeah.
So as close as you can get to what a TV 5 minutes or 3 minutes is going to be for us, the better off you are. And then the last, well, there's probably a bunch of nuggets, but here's another one. If you send us 10 things to look at, there might be some genius in there, but we're not going to get to all 10 of them. We get, because we have a lot of people to pay attention to you, you're much better sending us your 1 or 2 or 3 greatest tricks, being as informed as possible about what's already been on the show. I know everybody can't watch everything, but ask your friends, ask around. Do you think this is new?
Send you the single, not the album.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
We are so out of time, but this has been incredibly fascinating. But we always end the show with 4 quick-fire questions. I'm going to alternate because you're both going to answer all 4, if you'd be so kind. But you get thinking time. And, so we'll go Lincoln first, then Andrew, then Lincoln, and carry on. So, Lincoln.
Yes.
Favourite pizza topping?
Oh, sausage and black olive.
Andrew.
Fried eggplant.
So Andrew first this time. Favourite movie?
Oh,
I know.
Blade Runner.
Lincoln.
Favorite movie? God, there are so many.
I know. 1.
This century or last?
Whichever you prefer, man. Just 1 movie.
Yeah, you're asking me to pick a favorite. And he already said Blade Runner.
Are you sticking with Blade Runner? Are you both Blade Runner junkies?
I certainly was. I could quote every line there for a while.
Okay, that's fine. Andrew, Lincoln, you'll turn first with this one. Favorite person or people who make music?
Is that to me or to Andrew?
That's to you first, Lincoln.
The favorite person or people who make music? We are Valley Kids.
Andrew?
Stevie Wonder.
See, it was quick. I like your style. And finally, who would you rather fight? 1 massive Andy Gladwin or 100 tiny Joshua Jays?
Oh, I think it would be just. I would go with the 100 tiny Joshua Jays, just because there's more of them.
Uh-huh.
It would be fun.
Lincoln, do you share this opinion, or are you going for the massive Andy?
I would go for a massive Andy Gladwin because I don't like insects that much.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for giving me your time this afternoon. I really appreciate the insights, the behind-the-scenes looks, and the practical advice you have given to the people listening to the show that might want to chance their luck to see if they can come on your show. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.